Hey guys, welcome to today's Impact Stories show. So I have a very special friend here. Actually, she's my landlord. Um, we've known each other for several years, her and her awesome husband, and they have a beautiful daughter, Hope, which me and Lisa have yet to meet, and we're really looking forward to the day. But yeah, I think Helena's got an amazing story. Like, she's really inspiring to me. I wrote what I recognize in Helena, and we can explore this a little bit more later, is just her sensitivity to people around her. She's honest, very authentic, very real, but also that that sensitivity, that appreciation to see what it's like being in somebody else's shoes. And she's very aware of that in what she shares, and how she um, like relates to other people. And I'm sure we'll cross a few examples of this in a minute. But Helena, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for being on.
No problem. Your landlord. Thanks, Andy.
Just stating the facts.
Just feels really weird. I now feel like I'm in EastEnders or something and I'm the landlady. Great.
Yes, get into character.
Yeah.
Helena, the first question I think I'd love to ask, and I ask this with all the guests on the show, is how did you get to where you are now in your life? And you can track back as far back as you want to, as far back as you think is relevant. Um, but I would love to hear that, because I'm not even too clear on your background in your earlier years.
Mm. That's a dangerous question, isn't it? Because if I took my time, we'd go through 37 years of my life story.
Sure.
It is quite a convoluted route, if I'm honest. So we'll scroll through the first 18. I grew up in southeast London, and I'm a proud Londoner, although I kind of grew up in Kent, so make of that what you will. And then went to university in Leeds, where I studied English and theatre studies, and didn't know what to do with that degree. So ended up going into radio, working as a radio journalist. So I trained for a year as a radio journalist, and then that job took me all over the place around the country, not really to anywhere all that glamorous. But I probably shouldn't name cities in case people think that's really mean. I say their city is not very glamorous. So I did that for a few years, and then fell out of love with it quite quickly, journalism. I got really bored of covering stories that were, I suppose, deemed important to, what the media monkey circus deems important, which, as we all know, isn't often actually what's really pressing. And so I moved.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear more about that point. That
Yeah.
for you, what was it that you thought, this isn't what you had in mind?
Yeah, so I guess I got really tired of covering stories about celebrity boob jobs. Those make it into the news.
There's lots going around.
As you know, yeah. I remember covering a story about which European men make the best lovers. I didn't think that was very newsworthy when we've got serious stuff going on in the world. And I think the thing, I mean, they're slightly more flippant examples, but I suppose what I'm getting at is news is only news when it's new. And something can be going on, like the war in Syria, and we can decide that that's not new news, so we're not going to keep covering it. But actually, there are all sorts of angles you can take with that story, and keeping it in people's minds is really important. And that goes for so many different things in the world. That's what got me frustrated, basically. And I thought, no, I've had enough. I want real people to be heard, and I just felt like that wasn't happening. So
sure. Yeah. Okay, great. So
yeah. So no problem. So from there, I moved into communications and marketing. So I suppose the other side of the coin. I worked in Manchester then in public health for 18 months, working on public health campaigns, which was really good. And then I moved into the charity sector, total different I wanted a bit more of a global focus rather than a citywide focus, and I worked for a number of different charities then. And yeah, that's I think what I've come to learn about myself is that in terms of work and what motivates me, it's very much about values driven. And so working in charity setting really ticks that box for me, and working with people or for people, or ideally both. So I worked for a different number of charities, and then I'm getting to how we ended up here, which is 4 years ago now. We moved out of Manchester, and that came about really because Joe, my husband, had been working for himself, and I think had reached a natural plateau with his work and was trying to work out, how do I grow? How do I change what I'm doing? So we went around the houses quite a bit and ended up with talking about building surveying for him. So I'm going on a slight tangent, bear with. And there were 3 courses in the country. One happened to be in Sheffield. And so we moved in with my mum and dad for a year, which thankfully went well. And he then decided at the end of that year he did not want to leave the beautiful rural setting we now live in. And that was quite a tricky one for me, because I love the people that we had come to, have friends and call family really in Manchester. But the lifestyle out here is different. It's clean and beautiful, and a very different way of life, I suppose, to city living. And I wanted to do something that would really work for Joe. So we've been out in the Peak District for 4 years now, and initially I worked in the Peak District, again working for a mixture of charity and just in retail, and then got drawn back into that kind of charity field, but through a housing association, a not-for-profit housing association, which did a lot of social care as well as housing, until becoming a mum 7 and a bit months ago. So yeah, so that's kind of a potted history, but my CV is pretty messy.
Yeah. And that's it's fascinating, Helena. It's like, what I found is hardly anybody, if anyone at all, I think so far that I've had conversations with, have said that they are exactly where they had planned to be.
Yeah.
Imagine they would have had the jobs they had, or lived where they've lived, and that kind of thing. And so for you, you've made various decisions in and out of the private sector, and also different industries as well. You mentioned in that you were driven by your values. Were you aware of that? Was that what made you choose the degree that you did at the beginning, and then the subsequent job after that? Or how did that develop?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think going back to the degree, no, I was encouraged by my parents to do a subject that I loved. And I loved and love English and drama. I think it's only recently I've done a career anchors questionnaire, which is really useful. That was what kind of popped out your values driven headline. So that was really helpful, because that was quite kind of defining for me. But I think then looking back, I can see, oh yeah, that's why I've made those decisions. I seem to get itchy feet after about 18 months in a job. I don't know why. I don't know if it's that kind of desire for something new or new challenges. So that's often around the 18-month mark. I'm learning to kind of check in with myself now and think, right, what do I need to listen to you, that little twitchy voice, or is that is that helpful or not? And I don't think I've consciously been, so no, I wouldn't have said I've been consciously values driven, but I have been just trying to navigate my way through, what's holding my attention at the moment, what really matters to me. And it's always about people. So the interesting thing about the last job I've just done really was that it was quite business focused, and it didn't really click for me. So I've been kind of scratching around in that job, trying to work out how to make it people focused, and concluding I can't I can't make it. So that's been an interesting tension to live with for a little while, but I've had lots of other things that have been added to me in that time, in that job, which really helped. So you just see the blessings in that, I suppose. So,
Yeah, that's great. People focused, you say, Helena. What
yeah.
does that mean to you?
I think so. I think, if I'm honest with you, everything in life for me revolves around the investment we make in people, wanting to leave this earth, whenever that ends up being, feeling like I poured myself, my time into one person, a group of people. That's for me where, I guess if we're going with value, that's for me where the value is. So it's not so much about buildings and place and the earth, and there's so many other things out there that motivate us, but for me it's just about how can I enrich, inspire, encourage, love another person. And I've wanted to do that with my whole job, rather than just that kind of day-to-day interaction of somebody else, where I can, I suppose.
That's beautiful. And this will link back to what I mentioned in the introduction. The way that you relate with other people, your sensitivity, appreciation. I'm running out of vocabulary there to describe that. Articulate it a lot better. So how does that tie in? Like when you say you want to inspire, enrich, and love people, but how you do it will be different because you're Helena. You have your giftings, your particular talents, and the way you do it. So tell me how that reconciles, Helena. How do you do that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Thank you. So I did the Strengths Finder questionnaire with me, and I'm aware I'm talking about questionnaires. This is the funny thing about my last job, is they did a lot of that stuff. So I've kind of suddenly got all these results in front of me that have helped bring some clarity, although I'd like to think I'm self-aware enough to think, okay, I like that, or I'm like that. And this Strengths Finder questionnaire, 4 of the 5 top for me were about empathy in people, which I found quite funny, I think. I don't think I'd realised how on the people spectrum I am. And so I suppose for me, life is a lot about empathy. It's about listening to people and wanting people to feel heard. I guess if we go back to my journalism days, part of my frustration was about real stories not getting out there, and feeling frustrated that I wasn't working for an organisation at that time that really allowed those stories to be heard, to have the freedom to explore that. And so I think now, whether it's been through the charity sector or just through personal conversations with friends and family, I want to feel that people know they're heard and listened to and valued for who they are. Like you say, it's a kind of with what Helena brings to that, I suppose. And knowing that we all carry triumphs and we carry hurts. And I suppose I'm probably naturally inclined a little bit sometimes to look at the hurts, because I think we often want to hide that stuff, but I know that it's that stuff that often shapes us. And so I'm intrigued, and I guess I would like to I don't know, I'm just trying to work out what the motivator is for that, to be honest. But I think it's wanting people to feel seen and to be known, and to know that it's I suppose one of the main things that motivates me in life is about being real and authentic, like you said. So I'm really chuffed you used those words. But it's wanting people to know that they're safe. That's it, that they feel safe enough to be real. And that's not necessarily an instant thing, is it? But that's where I'm kind of heading towards normally with those interactions, is you're safe here to be who you are with me. And then yes, that's my kind of motivation, I suppose. I hope that answers your question.
It does, and more so. Amazing. Uh, Empathy. I love that. That was what empathy. That really sums it up, Helena. Really does. And so with that in mind for you, and being such a strong driver, or really, emphasized in the way that you mold and uh, develop the relationships around you, you'd be modeling that too. That display of, I guess, vulnerability, that display of, hey, it's not always like rainbows and sunshine. There's suffering, there's hurt. That's what's touched me is when, in the past few years, before you had hope, that was a journey, uh, and you would share, and not all the time on social media and in blogs, but when you did, it was a real outpouring of like personal uh, feelings and personal thoughts. Really inspiring. So thanks for sharing that. What was that like for you? It'd be nice to share, if you could share a little bit more behind the scenes of how those things came to be. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So a friend said to me in the time that I was, I don't even know if I'd started writing a blog really about infertility back then. But she said to me, "You're odd. You like to bring people into your pain. Most people like to hide their pain and show everything else. You seem to want to bring people into your pain," which had never really occurred to me. And I don't know whether that was just for me, what felt like the level of emotional pain, spiritual pain I was in, just was like, I can't hide this, or whether I'm just a very heart on my sleeve kind of person, or what. But that was really, again, that hadn't really occurred to me that that's what I was doing, but it definitely was. I think writing for me, I guess, if you go back to, she did English and drama, that would make sense. I was a journalist. Writing is just a natural state, although God kept bringing this word. So I'm a Christian, obviously, if I didn't work that out by now. God kept bringing people into my life saying, you need to be writing. And I'd say, okay, well, I'm going to pray that God would give me something to write about. I didn't think it would be the experience of infertility, but turns out it was. And I guess, so 2 reasons I ended up writing. One was it's cathartic. I was writing offline. I wasn't blogging for a while. It was really cathartic because I was trying to just navigate a really difficult thing. And then also, and I kind of am laughing because I can see, if I go back to my career a little bit, if we go back to this idea of telling other people's stories, I think what frustrated me in the infertility at the beginning was chatting with other women in the same situation, and it was mainly women rather than men going through it, who felt a lot of guilt or shame around their experiences of infertility, but were very uncomfortable talking about it. I think mainly because it does make you feel ashamed. As well, not mainly, there is one of the things that you can end up feeling. And I just would get cross and think, this isn't okay that these women feel like this. And I need to give a voice to what feels like a voiceless area of women that before I went through infertility, I had no idea was really a thing. And so that definitely motivated me to share my own experiences, because I certainly didn't want to try and blanket cover the whole topic. It's such a knotty individual thing that I wouldn't want to try and talk about it beyond my own experience. I've tried to be really careful in that. But yeah, there was then this kind of, okay, this is what we're in, this is what this feels like. But I did find the more I blogged, the more I was open about it, the more I had conversations with women who were saying, this really resonates with me, this is really truthful for my situation, or I can identify with that, or you summed that up with words that I just wouldn't know how to, but that's how I felt. And even within that, I think there's individual experiences, but certainly the topic of infertility and going through something like that, for me, one of the things that I struggled with a lot was, is this normal? Am I feeling normal in this? what is normal, and so I guess that's another thing of them beginning to want to share things, perhaps with the hope that somebody might read this and think, okay, someone else is experiencing this, so maybe it's okay to feel like this, maybe I am normal in this totally, I don't know how to be in this scenario time.
Yeah, yeah. So that sense of just somebody else to validate or provide some reassurance to, hey, what you're feeling, is okay. Like almost to relieve any sense of, if there were, the guilt and the shame that you might have been feeling. And also to encourage other people as well.
Yeah, that's right. And I did an interview a few years ago on Premier Radio where the interviewer had described it as a taboo subject in church, infertility. And I was quite uncomfortable with that as the kind of angle, because I thought, I don't think this is a taboo subject. I think it's just an unspoken about subject. I think it's one that is a very difficult subject to talk about. But I don't think it's taboo. So that word, and I'm quite particular about words, I've come to realise that word was uncomfortable for me. But I think it's a topic that we're learning to talk about more and more, which is a wonderful thing. I think that's really important for people. It's a very raw subject and has to be handled delicately. I suppose the downside with me talking so much about my own experiences, potentially I was opening myself up for judgment, and I'm sure I have done, and for people saying things that maybe weren't helpful or sensitive. But we were getting those conversations and comments anyway. So I don't think intentionally. I don't think people meant to say the wrong thing. It's just sometimes I think, well, I do it myself. Ignorance is something that lands us up into all sorts of things we probably shouldn't have said. But I think I wanted to make those just who had no understanding or experience of what we were going through aware of what it might be like for somebody, to try and educate and help them know how to support people.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Teaching them empathy.
Yes. Yes, perhaps that's it.
Or it's just shining a light into a world that they have no experience about.
Yeah. Which I had no experience of before, and have absolutely said the wrong things. Now I look back and I think, oh, I can't believe I said that or did that. So yeah.
And that journey was for a set period of time. Some people say it's been really hard and it's a few months. Some people say it's been hard and it's been many, many years. So that is subjective. So it was a set period of time for yourself and Joe. As a Christian, Helena, how was that relationship for you, between you and God, and going through that time?
Yeah, that's a thank you, Andy, for asking that question. I think just in relation to the kind of time period you talk about, I think something that I've come to learn is pain is pain. Doesn't matter if it's been 3 months of trying for a baby, 10 years now. Obviously, those who've been trying longer might argue differently, but I think the acute pain of wanting a child and finding that it's not happening, you can't quantify that. So I think we can end up wearing these things as a badge of honor a little bit, and I had to be really careful over the years that as we were clocking up the years, that I wasn't feeling like, well, I don't know why they're so upset, it's been X amount of time and we've done way more than that. I think I've tried to understand that actually how we feel is just how we feel, and you don't get to judge somebody as they're coping or not coping. So that's been something I've had to really try and get my head around a bit. And I think in relation to our relationship with God has gone through, so it's been such a roller coaster, so many ups and downs. And so where we landed in the end, where we I was encouraged to, and just really wrestled against, really kicked against, was that kind of idea of let go and let God. So let what will happen will happen. I was not up for that. I was up for fighting with everything in me. I did not want the possibility, and I think the same for Joe, to be that we wouldn't have children. And so I wanted to fight for that with all I'd got. But I think actually, by the time we got through, so towards the, I'm trying to think how to describe it. So we ended up having a series of miscarriages. And after the third and final miscarriage we had before Hope, I think we were broken. And so I'm starting at the end, but I think that's when I got to the let go and let God place, the place which was, I choose you, God, more than anything else. You are my priority. That's what I've signed up for as a Christian. So if we never have children, I still believe I'm going to have a full life. I still believe you're a good God. I still believe everything that you say you are. But if we then go backwards, there's been a lot of kind of processing and going through stuff to get to that point. And I would say I've had times of flying high with God, times of absolute agony, times of kicking against the situation and blaming God, times of holding God responsible and saying your reputation as God depends on the answer to this prayer coming, and then eventually realizing that's not how God's reputation works. God is God. And it would be foolish not to mention the amount of support we had. So my relationship with God has been held steady by so many amazing people. I mean, in terms of needing community around you, I guess in terms of wanting to be vulnerable in this subject and the scenario we were in, I just could not have done it without the support of so many people, whether they were praying for us and we knew it or didn't know it. You know, there's that picture of Moses in the Bible. It used to come up quite a lot of there's a battle going on, people are holding his hands up. And so that one would come up quite a lot as an image, but I think there were times when it was really true that we didn't have faith for ourselves and other people had faith for us. I'm just realising the phone slipped a bit, so I'm just going to pull it back up again. I'm probably kicking the chair, sorry. I've made some people quite uncomfortable in church, the amount of sobbing I've done. So my friend has nicknamed it my crying corner. And over the years, I think, just feeling really safe in church to let out what was just a lot of disappointment and frustration and sadness and grief and confusion and just the pain of why have I not got a family and other people have. But I think where we got to, and a book I'd recommend to help along the way was a book called Disappointment with God by Philip Yancey. I don't know if I'm not plugging it, but just it was a helpful book. And I was looking for the magic formula in that about how do we go through difficult situations and who is God within that. And I suppose I was hoping that there'd come some magic answer, and the answer really was you get to choose. You choose who God is. You choose whether God is who he says he is or not. And I guess, sorry, this has been a very long-winded way of saying where we've got to in the end was God is either who he says he is or he isn't. And we decided he is, regardless of the outcome for us with a family. Sorry, Andy, I've hold on a bit
No. You can't break that up. You needed to say all of that to really get across what you've been through. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it really just shows like again with your like empathetic heart with this experience, which, as you said, it's a difficult subject, a sensitive subject, very raw. And what you've done is shine some light on it, you know, and been very, very careful about how you do it as well. So it's great. Something that came to mind here, Helena, was you mentioned, women, I think you either said women go through it more or women speak about it more than the men. Um, in terms of yourself and Joe, what was that like in terms of how you journeyed that?
Yes, thank you. So that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because even as you've said that, I'm kind of challenging myself back. Is that a fair statement to have made? I would say that I think women talk about it more. That certainly should not for a second suggest that men don't feel it or experience it. It's just I had fewer conversations, and I have noticed over the years that men don't necessarily talk to other men about it. That's my experience of it. I tried to encourage Joe to do some kind of writing or let me interview him as part of my blog, just to give that perspective. He wasn't up for that, which is totally fair enough. And so I think, although I would, I guess now I'm thinking about it, there were occasions where guys did get in touch with him and said, shall we go for a beer? And I'm really grateful for those guys who offered, even though Joe didn't necessarily take them up on the offer. So we handled it quite differently, and I think I did try and check in with him, particularly about the blog when people are reading it. Are you okay with me putting this stuff out here? Is this all right with you? And I'm lucky and grateful that he was. But I think we've talked about it even since Hope's arrival. The kind of emotions for me were different from the emotions for him in terms of having a family, and so the emotions. So now she's here, but I think we would say that was true all the way along as well. And so my desire and the kind of emotions that I had every month, were just different from his. He didn't feel them in the same way, didn't have them in the same way. I suspect some of that is the physicality of what a woman goes through, is different than for a man. And so that monthly reminder for me, he doesn't have that, didn't have that, and so could stay steadier probably. But actually I'm really grateful for those times when he did stay steady, because kind of you could say, well, one of you needed to.
Sure. Sure.
And then there would be times when he would break down. We'd be watching a film and a scene would come on with a family, and then suddenly it's triggered something. But they were few and far between.
Thanks for sharing that insight. Hope Joe doesn't mind watching this back.
No, I hope so. I think so. Just to add probably there, Andy, I think probably what he'd say now is, if he could talk to guys in that scenario and that situation more now, he would. So the irony is, although he wasn't very good at talking about it when he was in it, I don't know that he regrets that, but I think anything he could do to support someone in it, he would want to do. So it's funny, isn't it, how that for him is, he didn't want to talk about it at the time, but is more comfortable doing that now.
Yeah, sure. And now you have Hope, which is well, Hope as in your daughter.
Yes, daughter Hope. Yes, and you're right. It's an intentional name choice.
Awesome! Congratulations so much.
Thank you very much.
Prayer and just fantastic.
Thank you.
So that shifted everything, right? Shifted that season has an end. Now you're in this new season.
So I probably would interrupt you there, and I would say you're right in terms of the season being Hope's here. You're right in terms of feeling very connected to all of that. I don't know that I feel sometimes like I straddle two worlds. So clearly I'm not in it anymore in the same way. But do I feel more connected to that than I do to being in a room full of mums and babies? Absolutely. So that's been a bit of a weird one for me in the last, well, certainly when I got pregnant and since then. So if somebody gets in touch with me because they've had a miscarriage, I'm back there and I really want to connect with them. If somebody's going through infertility or IVF, I'm absolutely back there with how it was for us. And that feels, in a weird way, more comfortable and familiar, because I knew it for number of years than this crazy new land of being a mum where I feel totally clueless. And I guess that would make sense, wouldn't it? You know, I've got experience under my belt, but I also feel very strongly that I don't want to forget what we went through, because so many other people do, and because it was such a painful time, and it mattered and it shaped us. So yes, so you're right. So I suppose it doesn't feel like it is seasoned, and it's one thing stopping and starting, but it also feels like I'm going to carry that with me, and I don't want to forget what that was like.
I love that. No, I love that. I love, and that's like, I mean, using in my words, that's like really owning everything that you've experienced, because as you said, it shaped you to be who you are. And as you continue to live your life, or as we continue to, there will be some things that pop out from the past, you know, that continue to shape us through the lens of what we're going through today. So yeah, that's a great answer. I love that. In terms of then, now that you have hope and you have the family, how then do you approach your sharing and what you were doing before? Has that shifted, or do you continue to document your journey and share that in the same way that you did before?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? So I think probably more than anything, in terms of if I was writing, and I'm not currently because my brain doesn't seem to have the capacity at the moment, which I'm frustrated by, really. I also don't have as much time, which, you know, is a cliche, but it's true. The time that I would like to take to write, and my writing is stewing for a while, some ideas, and then getting some ideas down, and then it begins to formulate. So I haven't invested the time, and there's choice in there, I guess, but I haven't invested the time. But I also find that in terms of writing, now my heart would be still to write around the subject. In the past, things that I still haven't probably addressed that are still in there. You know, something as simple as what not to say to somebody who's just had a miscarriage, or you know, there's so many different topics. It's pointless me reeling them all off. But so there's a lot of stuff that I think I still feel like there's some unsaid stuff there that I hope would help people. I think, if I'm honest with you, Andy, I've struggled a bit with quite a bit with the guilt of having had a baby. I'm so thrilled that Hope is here, and she's such an answer to prayer, and I feel like she belongs to an awful lot of people, because so many people, including yourselves, you know, were so encouraging and supportive, and prayed with us and had faith for us, and I'm so grateful for all of that. But there has definitely been some guilt with that. And so in terms of writing about the now, probably the now that I would end up writing about could not be disconnected from what we went through in order to have hope. So I guess by that I mean, my view of motherhood is so slanted by the years of waiting and the now of having, and just that gratitude, and it just feels like such a gift. But I also think, I don't know that women who are waiting for a child wouldn't necessarily find that helpful. And I would like to think that we would bring hope in some ways, hope with a little h. But I also am really aware that a lot of it would probably be unhelpful, because when you're in it, there is a sense of being in one boat, and once you have a child, those people are then in a different boat from you. And I certainly found I had a lot of I really struggled with feeling bitter and envious. And I never really fully overcame that, if I'm honest. I really tried and prayed a lot about it. So one thing, if I could pluck it out of myself, that is what I would throw in the bin. So I think in terms of writing now, I would want to do that really sensitively. And I haven't really worked out what that would look like. So yeah, so for now, there are bits and pieces in my brain, but I've no idea whether they've got any worth and how to put them down. So yeah, I love just seeing your cat in the back corner, which is fab.
Back.
Love it.
That's yeah, Helena. I love that, and I can tell you now that yeah, whatever you end up writing will be worth writing
Thank you.
for sure.
Thank you.
It's great. So what is next? Yeah, what
Yeah.
what is the next steps for you?
Um, so I think it's still just trying to work out what on earth this parenting thing is all about, because these babies, they change so fast. I haven't a clue what I'm doing, and then I think I've just about got a handle on it, and then they change it again. So I absolutely am a walking cliche. I think it's taken me a little bit of time to adjust to this whole new world, because the past became very familiar, and those years of not having a child became very familiar, and so I'm still adjusting. I think we're both still adjusting to what this looks like, and then just wanting to take time to really enjoy Hope. She is such a gift, and I feel so thankful to God for her. I'm having to learn how to connect with God with a baby in tow, because that's looks very different now, in terms of my brain space and my time, and prayers are quite simple at the moment. So I guess, yeah, I have the luxury of time to just enjoy her and enjoy this time of being off work. I think there is a little niggle in the back of my head, definitely, that talks, but okay, what value are you giving to your life and your time beyond Hope? And so that's definitely a thing for me, and I don't have an answer to what that will look like really yet. But it's something I'm praying about and kind of pondering. And I guess that then probably does go back to connection with people. And we live in an area out here where the demographic is probably leaning slightly more to the older population than the younger population. So yeah, I'm not really sure, if I'm honest with you. And I think the other thing I've learned, Andy, probably is to take life a bit slower. So I learned while we were waiting for Hope to come along to really be thankful in the day-to-day, and to live life a bit more in the present and the day-to-day. And so my long-term life goals are not so important now. I think I've learned what it is to just be present, and I think that's great in some ways, and I think in other ways it would be good to have a bit of a think. But I'm enjoying the fact that yeah, I can just be in the now and be with people in the now.
That's great.
So, yeah.
I love that. That's great, Helena. Thank you. And I'm going to wrap this up, and I think thank you so much for sharing in this such an open way, and through that, you've no doubt had impact on the people that have really felt the struggles and the challenges and some of the emotions that you've gone through, and that's had a really big impact, probably more than you might know. Right, there's going to be people that have come across your sharings that haven't come back to you and Joe. So you just recognize that you put yourself out there like that, and and had influence that you won't know about. With that said, here's a question that I ask everybody who comes on this: is how do you intend to further increase your impact going forward?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? So I think particularly around the topic of infertility, if I can just focus on that for a second, I still feel very passionately about that, and other people going through it. And so in prayer, I will always be pounding the gates of heaven for more babies, less infertility, please, Lord, more miracles, because I absolutely believe God is for that. And just wanting to get alongside people who might be going through it as much as they feel comfortable, obviously. So there's that. And then I'm still itching to write. I think when I started writing, what I came to realize was I was writing about the topic of infertility, but I didn't necessarily want to become like a representative of infertility. I wanted to become a representative of hope. And so although I will always be willing to talk about what we've been through, and I will always want to get alongside people in that, for me, what I feel like I'm carrying is about bringing hope. And so that applies to all sorts of situations. And so I suppose when it comes to praying for people or having any kind of impact, I would like it to be that it doesn't matter what situation it is, we can speak hope into that situation. And there's some transferable stuff because of what we've been through that is relevant. I mean, going back a little bit in our conversation, obviously there are times when I definitely have said, and no doubt will say again, the wrong thing, because you can't understand what it's like to be in somebody else's shoes unless you've been through a very similar thing to them. But I hope that what I've learned I can apply, and I guess because of being a Christian and just loving God so much and loving his nature, I want to bring that with me to other people, so it's impacting other people through that. No, God's been so good to us and so faithful when we've not been faithful to him, that he understands, you know, the ups and downs of what we've been through. And I want to share what I've learned in some ways, in lots of ways, with others.
Awesome. I think, and then that's almost a little bit like continue to do what you have already been doing in a way.
Yeah, perhaps that's it. Perhaps that's it. I guess that's it. As long as people, you know, people are always going to matter to me. So whatever that looks like, I'm always going to want to get alongside them. And yeah, we'll see what that looks like in the future.
That's cool. Helena, thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a really powerful story. And I just want to also recognize that whilst we have spent a lot of time talking about this particular topic, there's other things that are going on as well. I'm sure there are other thoughts but we just didn't have time.
Yeah, sure. No, it's great.
Very, very real, very relevant. And you're just really, thank you so much. You inspire me. And me and Lisa, we love you guys.
Thank you, Andy.
Thanks, Helena. Bye for now.
Bye.